Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Hipster Codes. This is Hipster GW. Today we're going to continue talking about Python classes, specifically the magic methods or the dunder methods of dunder repr and dunder str string. So the representation method and the string method, what are the differences between them? When will they return in one instance or another? So we're going to go over them. I've already covered the basics of classes, so I'm going to link that video down in the description below. So if you don't understand what's going on with the initialization or the instantiation of these different class objects here, go watch that video first. So we have a video game class, and each video game has a title, a developer, a year, and a genre. And you see I just created 3 objects in memory: Kingdom Hearts, Need for Speed 2, and Nightfire, 3 of my favorite games growing up. So the way I'm going to actually distinguish the difference between these is I'm going to be coding in the REPL. So I'm going to be in the Python interpreter. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to run this main.py file, but I'm going to add the -i flag first to run it interactively or in interpreter. So now I'm in the Python interpreter, so it executed that entire script, and now you see it left it open, so we have the triple carets, but we can actually interact with these objects. You can see we have Kingdom Hearts here. So if we wanted to, we could see the title of Kingdom Hearts, of our Kingdom Hearts game, which of course is the string Kingdom Hearts. So lowercase kingdom underscore hearts is the variable name, and of course the title attribute within our class object is the string Kingdom Hearts capitalized. And of course we would get the same for Need for Speed. You know, we could do Nightfire.year, 2002 is the integer. So obviously that makes a lot of sense, but if we wanted to, what we're seeing here is the return of that attribute, but what would the entire class object return? You've probably seen this before. If not, then prepare yourselves. And Kingdom Heart does not exist, so actually let's do Kingdom Hearts because that is what I named the variable. And you see what we get is this very non-helpful thing that says dunder main.videogame object at 0x da 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 da. What this is a location in memory on RAM where this object is saved. Of course, it means nothing to us, but it does mean something significant to the computer because this is hexadecimal, I believe. And so it's able to actually find the data for our object there. And this is just saying we are in the main script. Now, it's not dunder main because of the name of the file is main. I could have named this file platypus and it would still be dunder main, but we'll go over the difference why it has the main script be dunder main in another video. But this is the name of the script in memory, and then this is the name of the class that we have instantiated. So it actually kind of does give you information, but nothing super helpful about the details inside that video game object. So if we wanted to, the first thing we could do is override the representation method, because that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the dunder repr, the representation method that is under the hood for all of Python. And so we could first override it by just saying we're going to define dunder repr. It's going to take in self and nothing else, and it has to return a string. So we're going to return an F string, and here we could actually put some helpful information. Now, we might not want to put all of the information. I'm not going to in this example. You're going to have different standards at different companies and things for how you would actually structure this, but usually you're going to put these little alligators here, the greater than less than sign, because this is usually an identification that you're dealing with an object, right? So, but now we could say, how do we want to actually know what object we're dealing with? You'll often see the name of the class first, and then you'll see some other sort of identification here for the specific object. And so if we just wanted to say the title of the game, we would be able to get that through self, because self represents the object in memory. So if we call the representation method on the specific object, we would see the title. So let me quit out of this REPL because it has the old code. Let's run it again. So now let's try out Kingdom Hearts. And you see we will no longer get that location in memory representation object. We will get video game Kingdom Hearts. So the greater than less than signs, let us know what we're still doing with the class object, but we actually get some helpful information. You see need for speed. And with this example, we have only overridden the dunder repr method. We haven't overridden the dunder string method, which we'll go over in a second, because you see here, if we print the object, so we print need for speed instead of just returning it. Notice when we typed here, we're just returning the object. And then in the REPL, it actually shows the return. But you see, if we print it now, we get the exact same thing, because if there is no dunder string, it will print the dunder repr. But if we give it a dunder string now, that we would give something else. Dunder string is really meant to be more forward facing. It's meant to be something more geared toward what an end user might see. The dunder repr is really meant for the developers of your program. So really only somebody that knows Python and is working on it should be seeing the representation method, the dunder repr method, which is why you wrap it in something like this that only a programmer would understand. The dunder string, my experience and my understanding is you have a little bit more flexibility for how you would actually represent this towards somebody that might be more of an end user. And so what is the actual string that you would want to represent this object for an end user? And it could be a bunch of different things, but we could just say video game title, and then we could say self.title, but maybe we also want to include, released in, and then we could do the year. So we could do self.year. And notice, you often won't see the greater than, less than signs in the string because, right, that's usually meant for developers to understand that you're dealing with an object. All right, so I forgot to put the double underscores on each side, and then I had to do some debugging, and I was not figuring out what was going on. But now we have a dunder repr method, a dunder string method. You need the double underscores on each side, or else you're going to be like Hipster was a few seconds ago, being very confused why it's not doing what you think it's going to do. But now this should totally work. So I'm going to run this in interactive mode once again. We are going to use Nightfire as an example now. Notice I'm just returning Nightfire, and because we're in the REPL, we see the returns. But of course, whenever you're creating a script, it doesn't print out the returns to the terminal. It just returns it to whatever is calling the function or this method in this instance. So we are just returning the object, and the default is it's going to return the representation method for the object if it exists. And so now you see, we see the representation method. So we have the greater than, less than signs showing it's an object. But if we wanted to print Nightfire this time we get the dunder string. Before, when we didn't have the dunder str, we just got the representation method. Because by default, if you return, it's going to give you the dunder repr. If you print, because printing is more of a forward-facing, more of a end-user-facing type of function that could be called in certain CLIs. Still, for most of our purposes, whenever we print, we're usually doing it for ourselves as developers, but it still is going to use the dunder string if you have both. So if you have both, you return, it's going to give you the dunder repr. If you print, it's going to give you the dunder string. Let me actually see if you only have the dunder repr, whether you print or return, it's going to give you the dunder repr. Well, I don't know if I've ever tried just a dunder string. So let's see. Let's experiment here and see if we have just the dunder string, what happens whenever we return. So now if we return Kingdom Hearts. Yep. Okay. So the dunder repr will override the dunder string if there is no dunder string. So the default behind the scenes string representation for the object, the dunder repr will take precedence if you print, but it doesn't go vice versa. So we just experimented and figured out we returned Kingdom Hearts, but we didn't get the string representation of it. We didn't get the string method returned. It only gives us the string whenever we print Kingdom Hearts. So it doesn't go, it's not vice versa, right? So if you don't have a dunder string, it will give you the dunder repr if you have it. If you don't have either, you're only going to get this, whether you print or you return. But if you don't have the dunder repr, you return the object, it's going to give you that default DunderRepper useless thing. So generally with more advanced classes, you want to have both. Of course, you always can access these directly just by calling it on the object, just FYI. So we could call the DunderRepper. Actually, we're going to get an error because I haven't reloaded this into memory, but you can see we can actually call the DunderString here just as any other class or any other method. So we're going to call it. Apparently can't. Did I lie? Oh, I didn't type Kingdom Hearts again. I did Kingdom Hearts singular. So there we go. You see, we actually called the DunderString method. If I reload the DunderRepper back into memory, and this time we can do Nightfire dot dunder underscore repper double underscore. We're going to invoke it because it is a method, right? And of course we can call, I just showed it a second ago, but I'm going to show it again, the DunderString method. And so you can actually call them directly if you want to as well. Just have to make sure that you define them. And just remember, because they're both instance of methods, you have to pass in self, but whenever you pass in self, you have access to all the attributes inside the class and the methods as well inside the class that you can access directly through self. So that's the difference between the two. That's sometimes I've used one, sometimes I've used another. But whenever you are returning, if you have both, it will give you the representation method. Whenever you're printing, if you have both, it'll give you the string method. If you only have the representation method, it will work for both printing and returning. If you only have the string method, it will only work for printing, and you'll have just that default object thing for returning. So there you go. Hopefully that cleared up a lot of it. I actually learned something right there because I had never tried only a string method before. I do sometimes only do a DunderRepper method, but it's often good to have both. That's my experience why you would use both, like the differences between having both. And of course, that makes a lot of sense whenever you think about it. So if you have any other questions or if anything isn't making sense, please leave them in the comments below. Hopefully you found this helpful, and stick around for the next video because we're going to keep going on with some awesome Pythoneering goodness in future videos. Thanks again. This is Hipster Code, Hipster GW, and I'll see you in the next one.